Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. In this video, we're actually going to be planting several perennial things in the garden, but we're actually starting with a few annuals and a couple grasses and ground covers and things that we're putting in the boxes on the shed. These coconut core liners or coconut fiber liners break down after 2 or 3 years, and I think the birds had been taking them away slowly but surely because they were sinking down in the container. So we replaced those this morning. Got some new soil in there. Generally, we would just replace about a handful of soil for a plant that we're putting back in there. But this morning, put a mix of compost and some bark that we had. We've got about a half a bag of soil cube compost left that we're mixing with some fine pine bark as we go. There's a variegated vinca major in here, and we use that in containers, container things all the time. It's a nice place to put it because it can weep down a long way and not hit the ground and not worry about it rooting in. There's a couple of different kufia in here, and I'll put the varieties on the screen. And there are 3 wave petunias. So hopefully they'll come down over the front edge. There's a blue fescue. So playing off some blue in several things in this container, things with a bit of a blue hue to them. And then there's a spice bush or lindera sitting in the back that's about this tall. And the only reason it's in there is actually just for us to get some roots on it. It's been in a small container. Tom Cox gave it to us when we visited him at the Cox Arboretum, and he passed away, unfortunately, not too long after that. And so that little spice bush has been sitting in this little pot, and we're getting it in some better soil, gonna get some roots on it, and then I'll pull it back out of here, but it's hiding back in the back. We've got a couple of things like that actually that we put into some containers just to try to get a little bit of roots on them, so then we can transplant them safely out into the garden later, because some of these have some meaning to us from travels and that kind of thing. We got another container over here on the other side. These baskets on the building, that other one is 36 inches wide and this one is 48 inches wide. We reused, like we always do, the lamiastrum over here. This one can definitely get out of control in the ground in the garden, and so it's nice to kind of elevate it someplace. Because we had it planted in the vegetable garden through the winter and then dug it back up and then have divided it, it doesn't look as good as it's going to look in 2 or 3 weeks. It just needs to root in somewhere and get going, and it'll be fantastic. There's several. We use that front container is in almost all day sun. It's sun's hitting it right now at 7:30 in the morning, and it's in the sun for most of the day. This one rarely gets any direct sun, and almost no direct sun during the summertime. So everything over here will tolerate shady conditions. There's angel wing begonias. We're lucky enough to be able to buy in 4-packs. Most of these begonias like this, unfortunately, are mostly in pints, but down at Big Bloomers, they typically have them in a 4-pack. So that otherwise they probably wouldn't be in here, just because in the larger containers they're a little expensive. The coleus back here will get a little bit taller than the begonias. Ultimately, it's a yellow with kind of a pink center. We'll put the names of everything on the screen. There's a pink polka dot plant in here, and then over here, tucked away next to this other lamiastrum, is an Everillo carex, which we just cut back. So this will just be a little fluffy chartreuse, of course, color foliage piece in here. But this should fill out rather quickly. And again, this one doesn't get direct sun. And the watering is very different because of that too. That one in the front is dry constantly, and this one needs water quite a bit less often. Okay. First up on the perennials is we're putting in our second blue-eye grass. This one is called Swan. We have lucerne out in the front garden. It has a darker color flower than this one. It's got a few more flowers to come, but a lot of it's already kind of flowered out. Ours in the front garden is just getting started flowering. Steph and I have a few times down in Florida run across the blue-eye grass, and they grow in very different areas. This one was actually found in Florida. This one's, I think, available on Plant Delights, or periodically available. This is where we got this one from. I don't know if there's any availability on it right now, but it was actually found on a limestone outcropping along the Swanee River. Our soil's very acid here, so it'll be interesting how well this one performs. This is a slightly moist space and part shade to maybe half a day sun, something like that. I think it's kind of the ideal condition for it, but we'll see how this one performs. It's a bit, when we seen this one in the garden over there at Juniper Level, it is a giant showy thing. Really quite a bit different than the other blue-eyed grass I've seen out in the wild, which tend to be one little plant here or there. This one is much fuller and much more overall colorful with more and more flowers. So we'll see how it performs here in the Raleigh garden. We added yet another ground cover sedum to the garden. This is Sedum Mackinoy variegata. This is a variegated sedum that is super heat tolerant. Well, most of them are super heat tolerant of really kind of poor soil conditions as well. This spot out here by the street just absolutely cooks. I don't know how many ground cover sedum we have out here. One in a video as you're watching this a couple days ago that's quite a beast back in the back garden, taking over some space, and a lot of them can. So we'll control them when we need to. A lot of the control will be added by shrubs that will typically fill in and shade spaces out over time. Really like the texture of that one. Really like the color of it. There's it'll end up with yellow flowers, which is fairly typical of most of these ground cover sedums. I've got one growing around the green penguin pine out here, and I just keep going around the bottom of it like this and just making sure it's not climbing up on it at all. But this one is about to come into full flower right now. This will be a yellow halo basically around the green penguin pine. On the outside of the little fence next to the driveway, there's a goldenrod that has really thrived in this space. And then there is a daylily called Autumn Minuet. And it has flowers up about this tall later in the summer, which really quite beautiful. We added one of our favorite native perennials, but we don't necessarily have a very good place for Rudbeckia maxima, because this Rudbeckia gets 5, 6, 7 feet tall, has these really bright gold rays surrounding this brown center. Goldfinches love them. Pretty much everybody watching can grow this plant. It's native to a good portion of the country, and it's typically out in prairies, and the flowers stand up way above everything else in the prairie, which allows goldfinches and other things to see them from a long, long way away. It has this really beautiful bluish green foliage, and just a fantastic plant. It was well rooted in that container, really well rooted. This is another one we got from Plant Delights, and great, just a straight native Rudbeckia maxima with which will be entertaining if nothing else. It's kind of super entertaining to see a plant come up out of the ground and be 7 feet tall in a single season and be in full flower. We kind of have a space around this edge where goldfinches really like. There are several cone flowers and other things that the goldfinches are really drawn to. So I'm going to call this Goldfinch Corner over here. A lot of the things we've added have been with intent for them. In addition to our little stepping stone path out front, we added this woolly thyme, which I think pretty much everybody watching can grow. It's like hardy in zone 4 to 9, but the hotter the area, it may need a little bit of sun protection. Typically goes out in the full sun, but by the time you get down to zone 9, it might want to be in an area that's kind of half and half. It will just mat across the ground. It'll grow where it wants to grow. If it grows back that way, that's fine. If it comes between the stones, that would be better. We'll see how it goes. It's woolly thyme, but it doesn't have the scent that other like lemon thyme or any of the other culinary thymes would be. This is an ornamental. It'll get little pale pink flowers on it that are fairly insignificant, but it has this blue-green foliage in the winter. It can get a bit of a pink hue in a cold winter, but it'll just grow flat to the ground, maybe 2 inches tall and about as wide, slowly creep across into space that it can find and it wants to grow into. Sometimes, ground covers will go the opposite direction of the way you think they're going to go because they want to go to wetter soil or drier soil or whatever, or more sun or less sun than you're putting them in. But it's a nice little addition, and it will take some, a small amount of foot traffic, not something that can just be walked on all the time, but if it gets stepped on here or there, or a wheel hits it here or there, it's not going to be that big of a deal. We added another pulmonaria out here to the front garden. This one is raspberry splash, and it'll get these raspberry colored flowers during the month of April. And our other pulmonaria is one of the more abused plants in the entire garden on the back line in the back, which I've talked about several times about how dry it is back there. And so a lot of perennials that we initially put in, shade perennials, the shady space back there, just failed. Hosta survive, that's what we'll call it back there, but most everything else has to be really kind of drought tolerant, things that can really take tough conditions. And the pulmonaria back there is just absolutely thriving. I mean, really, really thriving. So I added another one out here to the front garden where this one's kind of a mixed sun and shade space, tucked up under the front, kind of the front of this spirea, which this is about as big as we'll let it get. This was our annual border back here, and we've just moved it out just a bit. If you're watching, following along with the channel, we're redesigning this front garden, and so this will end up being a clump about, if it's like the one in the back, after 2 years, it's about 12 inches wide and maybe 10 inches tall, something like that. Really beautiful foliage, with or without flowers, but it does flower as well, and just a really kind of a low maintenance, interesting plant out here in the front garden. Added a couple perennials on the path that heads to the back left corner of the back garden here. Added another ajuga. We have several ajuga here in the garden, and they're just easy plants that cover ground that we don't have to worry about. This one's called Black Scallop. It'll get a blue flower on it. Maybe a month ago is when, or 2 to 3 weeks ago at this point, is when most of our ajuga was blooming. It's in the Lamiaceae, so was that woolly thyme earlier in the video. Both of those are going to be, these things in the mint family are good for, not having to deal with the rabbits. So that, just a great little black foliage ground cover that will take up some space, an area we're not going to have to mulch in the future. And then one that we're really excited about back there behind it, that is a licorice, and we don't have any licorice in the garden here. This is a hybrid from Plant Delights. It's a Plant Delights introduction. This one, again, licorice, sometimes called hurricane lilies, sometimes called surprise lilies, lots of different names for them. This one is called Berry Awesome. It starts off pink and then develops kind of blue tips on it and has a two-tone coloration in it. The reason these are called surprise lilies is because they're actually dormant during the summertime. It's kind of really interesting. You see this little grass-like foliage that it has on it right now. That'll actually go dormant when it gets hot, and you'll think it died. And then it comes up with the flower spike before the foliage returns on it. And so they just literally, that's why people call them surprise lilies, because out of the blue, out of nowhere. This is a hybrid one. And we're super excited about this. Hopefully it'll do well in this location. It's kind of part shade, part sun. It'll get some direct sun on it. Hopefully it's the right location for them, because we wanted to add a few hurricane lilies or surprise lilies to the garden for a couple years, and that's the first one. And this is one of the coolest ones. It's got, the flowers are so incredibly showy and so unique amongst other licorice. Added hosta number 1200 to the garden. There's not 1200, but there are a lot of different hosta here in the garden. We may go back through and show them off at some point. We're in the process of doing all of this planting. We've gained space in several locations in the garden. Excited about that, jumping in, planting. At some point we'll slow down enough to go back through and do an actual tour here in the garden, because it just looks absolutely, looks pretty incredible right now. There are some things laying around here and there that need to be put away, but it does look pretty amazing. This hosta is called Diamond Lake. And you can see that blue kind of corrugated foliage. It gets quite, the leaves will get bigger in time on it, and it'll fill a good portion of this space, about this tall. This area with the Zenobia has some blue in it. The next hosta down has some blue in it. The Distilium down at the end has some blue in it, and it plays off of this Clara that's sitting next to it. So it's like this little blue row through here. It's kind of interesting. We'll whatever we put behind the Zenobia back here, whatever evergreen we do to plug this screen of plants we have across here, will be some sort of darker green color in all likelihood, just to, need something to contrast with all these blues that have lined up almost accidentally here in a row, but they look great. Diamond Lake, almost everybody can grow it. This is Agap Podium. This is a variegated Agap Podium. This one will probably take some space, almost faster than we want it to at some point, probably. We can cut this, after it flowers and has seed heads, you can actually cut them off to make sure it's not spreading by seed, but it'll spread by rhizome, cover the ground in here. This is bishop's weed or Agap Podium. It will occasionally revert back to green, and so if I see any reversion in it, we have to get that cut out. But this was a clearance plant from our local garden center. We needed something out here by the road that would take kind of semi-tough conditions and kind of a lack of love, because we probably won't water over here all that much. And so some tougher things and some things even like the Spanish bluebells that can kind of take some space and push things about. Same thing with this. Same thing with the fetid hellebores over here. They can be kind of tough competition with one another. But this will just cover the ground space in here, hopefully require less mulch. If it gets bigger than I wanted, I'll come in here and cut it out with my shovel. But great looking little variegated ground cover. We're adding our second spike moss or Selaginella to the garden. When I was over in Germany last year at the Berlin Botanic Garden, they had a giant collection of the tropical Selaginellas, the ones that you can be used in terrariums. You know, that's the place you're typically going to see Selaginella. But there are some hardy ones. We have the arborvitae fern in the back garden. Apparently rabbit decided it liked it. Typically stays evergreen through the winter, but a rabbit ate it to the ground. It's coming back beautifully back there. But this one is Selaginella crossiana aurea, and it's got that yellow color in it. That's where you're going to get that aurea name from. Great looking little plant. I love these spike mosses. There's so many of them that anytime I see them in any garden, I love them. They typically like moist conditions. This one right here will take our clay soils without any problem. Evenly moist soil, I will say. It looks like an actual moss, really, but it's not. It's its own group of plants. We got one more we're going to be adding to the garden. It'll be in a separate video. But there you go. There are 10 new perennials for the garden here in Raleigh this morning. Plus, we put the planters back on the shed in the back and redid the coconut the coconut lining or coconut fiber lining that's in them. So they look a whole lot better for this season. Last season they just didn't look good. It seems like about a 2-year limit on those things, but we were able to reorder the liners on Amazon and had them here quickly and replaced them. There you go. 10 new perennials, and we have a lot more. We have a lot more to go in the ground over the next few weeks. So thanks for following along with it.